Hey guys, what's up? It's filtersc here, and I'm back for the Wood to Bronze series, part of the bigger Bronze Master series. This time we're going to be taking a look at your APM because that really leads into the final topic for the Wood to Bronze series. And the reason I'm going to talk about APM is not because you need to necessarily get a lot faster to play the game well, but you need to know to be able to play within your limits, kind of how quickly you can play, and not trying to do too much at once. And the example I'm going to use is a game I played on my stream the other night, and it's just a first-person VOD, so you can kind of see all my actions, my mouse actions, that kind of stuff. And my overall APM for this game is about 127, which is actually pretty low for a Terran player, especially a Terran player doing a relatively complex build. So overall, I'm a relatively slow player compared to other players that I will play at my level, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not going to stand a fighting chance, because I'm trying to use my APM to the most effective ability that I possibly can, right? And you'll see a lot of people will talk about it and say, like, you need X APM to play whatever race. And, to some of you guys, even 127 might actually sound kind of fast. And the most important thing when you're talking about managing, the actions you can do is that you're able to do things quickly and accurately. And one of the fastest ways to build APM is to know what you're trying to do in advance, right? And for me, that's basically what happens. I already know everything I'm going to do in a game and what my overall plan is. And from there, it's just being able to execute it and that kind of stuff. So I'm not necessarily thinking about what I'm doing, I'm just doing it. And that's one of the most important things to start building up your APM and getting a little bit faster, is to already know what you want to do. If you know what you're going to do in advance, then you just have to do it, and you'll react a lot faster than you otherwise normally would if you're trying to read off a build order on a sheet while playing the game at the same time. You should already kind of know what you're trying to accomplish, right? And basically what it is how much time can you devote to a task to accomplish it, right? That's what APM is. For some of you, it might take you a lot longer because you don't necessarily know the hotkeys or anything like that. So when it comes time to build a command center, it takes you a lot longer. Whereas for me, I can jump to my camera hotkey, press BC, and build the command center straight away, or even add more steps in to make it even more refined. And you're going to see an example of that, where I don't go build the command center immediately and just straight up throw it down. I'll usually send an SV down in advance to kind of sit there. Now in this case, because I saw the probe, I'm actually not going to do that, and I'm going to wait until my Reaper gets out before I go build the command center, because I don't really want to completely reveal that to my opponent straight away. I want to have him have a little bit of mystery about it and have to work for that scout. But you're going to see the SCV's gone down, it's rallied to the minerals before the command center goes down. Now it's going to build the command center. I'm not trying to build it straight away. And that's an example where just like using a little bit more APM gets me a more efficient build, right? I don't have to already have the 400 minerals before my SCV starts walking down. And that really ends up being pretty vital. But you want to really think about what you're doing and what your strategy is. This game is a perfect example of that, where it's a build that requires a lot of multitask and a lot of just kind of core basic APM to pull off properly, because you're attacking multiple fronts, you're doing a lot of macro and throwing things down in the background, and you have to jump around a lot. So if you're new to the game or whatever, maybe doing something like this is a little bit out of reach, and you're better off sticking to something more basic, because you're going to be able to macro better. You're not going to bank as much. All that kind of stuff is super, super important when you start thinking about your APM, right? And you really want to be not necessarily in the mode where you're thinking when you're playing, you just want to be acting, right? I already know, like I said, everything I want to do in this game. It's going to be a simple Widow Mine drop. There's going to be an eventual push with +1 in stim, and we're going to try to end the game off it. Now, in the case of my opponent, part of the reason he has trouble in this game defending is because he plays really greedy, and he goes for really fast upgrades. He's got his 2-2 about halfway done, and I haven't even started +1 armor. But that doesn't matter because the game ends because of his greed, right? And he wasn't able to prevent my attacks and that kind of stuff. So when you're up against a greedy player, being able to hit your timings and all that will make a big difference, right? But don't feel like you have to push yourself all the way through and do all this crazy stuff to win. Because at the end of the day, if you're, a relatively new player and you're not that fast yet, I think when I started I was about 25 APM or something like that, which is, slow by today's standards. I wasn't able to do all this fancy stuff. I just wouldn't be able to execute it. If I tried, it wouldn't work. Many things would get screwed up and all that kind of stuff, right? So, start at a really basic level and just focus on certain tasks. If you focus on a task, you're more likely to accomplish that. So the more basic example is just focusing on your worker production. Focus on unit production when you can start getting your workers out consistently. In this game, I was actually pretty solid with my worker production. I had a lot of SCBs. There weren't too many gaps where things were missed. I wasn't getting supply blocked over and over. Those are all basic, what sound like basic things, but they're actually very important concepts to be able to get right. You'll notice before my Marines even get here to, start the little move out, I've already thrown down the extra depots and the stuff I need in the background so that everything's going to line up quite nicely. Once again, my Marines are pushing forward and I'm throwing down my extra barracks. I'm picking up my drop. I'm getting ready. Everything is kind of set up so that, I can do the things that I need to do in advance, like build the barracks, build all my extra stuff before I get to the point where I need to attack. If I'm a little bit slower, I'm going to have to do both of those at once, which ironically enough is going to be even harder because I'm going to be a lot slower of a player, right? Once you start getting comfortable with your APM, that's where you can start pushing out for more map control. That's where you can start doing more skirmishing, more scouting, and then finally multitask, right? So in this example, you're going to see my drops just kind of sitting in the middle while I'm fighting that. I thought he had an unusually large army for this stage of the game, so I was a little bit concerned. On top of seeing the probe in the middle of the map, I thought he might be applying pressure. That's why in this case I go for the extra barracks before I do anything else. And you're going to see the drops going to kind of come in. The Widow Mines are going to burrow and they're not going to be able to get good hits. I had actually had trouble getting them clicked and down. If I did that, they would have got good hits. But that's, just a mechanical problem. So I'm just going to pick them. I'm not going to leave the mines. I'm not going to try to force them to do something. I just pick them up and leave because I know I need to start stim. I know I need to start my other upgrades at home. I need to get the barracks all flipped in. So I don't necessarily need to worry about those Widow Mines doing damage. I need to not hurt myself, right? And that's kind of the key right now. You're seeing quite a bit of overboxing and that kind of stuff. But when you start talking about your own APM, this is where it gets really important. You notice, like, for the vast majority of the game, my money's been very low. I haven't been supply blocked. I probably have too many depots, but that's not actually ever really a bad thing. You'll see a lot of, pro players will add on extra depots before they attack and that kind of stuff, so they don't have to worry about it later. In this case, that's probably, well, not probably, that is too many depots. We're way oversupplying that. That money could be better spent, much better spent elsewhere, but it's okay. It's better than being supply blocked, so I'm not overly concerned about it. And then finally, we're going to go back in for the mine drop. You can see he's fully prepared for it. My opponent spotted the drop. It's not going to get anything done, but that's okay. The bigger point of the drop is actually a lot of scouting information and that kind of stuff, and I didn't really see anything off him that was too unusual, too scary. Something as another example that I see is, the Phoenix coming through my base there. That's just the hallucinated Phoenix. But to me, that says he's trying to use this robo time more for a Colossus, or that he doesn't even have one. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. But these are all things that you need to be worried about when you're playing and trying to build up your APM, right? Because APM is a resource just like anything else in the game. You can see, for the most part, I'm spending the vast majority of my time sitting at home. I'm not trying to overdo it and, move out with my army all the time and all that kind of stuff. I am checking to see, if he has a third base, and that's going to be a big indication to me of what he could be potentially doing. Like, am I worried about a Colossus all-in? Hallucinated Phoenix coming through says Colossus all-in is definitely a real possibility. But if he's taking a third base, it's a little bit less likely. And at the same time, I know then I'm going to have to move out and do something about it and punish it, right? But you can see I've got my third command center down. I've got, my extra barracks down. I've got my upgrades going. I've got my money well spent before I do any of them moving out. And that's because I'm not fast enough to be able to do all that stuff at once, right? And this really applies to everybody. You want to be making sure you're not overdoing it and trying to do too many things at once and putting yourself in trouble, right? And APM takes a long time to build up, and it's an important resource in the game. But it's not the end of the world if you're not like super ridiculous and all that kind of stuff. And finally, you can see we're just throwing down our third command center before we move out. I believe I transferred the SVs and all that stuff before, but just, slight pokes. Not really too worried about his army because I've seen where it's positioned. I know he backed it off, so I can go kill the third for free. If you notice, I'm not staring at my army like, microing it without actually controlling it or anything. I'm much more focused on making sure my back end is done correctly. Because even if he engages, I can probably just disengage his army and run away. I've killed his third. Establishing my extra barracks and all that stuff is much more important. And we're finally going to see a big fight that ends the game. And that is what this game is all about when you start talking about your APM and all that kind of stuff. It's all about spending it efficiently, right? You notice as soon as there's a major engagement, my money will start to bank up quite heavily because I'm not really able to go back home and macro up and all that kind of stuff. You can see my hotkeys. I finally tagged through to make a few extra units, but not too much. And you can imagine if I spent the whole game skirmishing and fighting like this, how bad my macro would look, right? And it's all about managing your APM, managing what you can do, and working up from the basics. Anyway guys, my name is filtersc and I will see you guys with the next video. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. I know it's a little bit short, but APM is an important thing. It's hard to develop. Hopefully this is a decent example for you, and in the next game or the next video we're going to talk about map control and scouting and all that kind of stuff and how you should implement that into your game, because it's actually one of the last things you should really start to think about doing. I'll see you guys next time.